All right, welcome to the Flare Up Show. This show is produced by the amazing Clarissa Burt in the Limelight Media. And today I have the fabulous Kay Loughrey. She is a nutrition expert, coach, author, and speaker. She has helped herself and hundreds of people lose weight and maintain weight loss. From a trauma that Kay experienced as a child, she yo-yo dieted for decades and became a dietitian to stop being controlled by food. Kay offers a message of hope that no matter what has happened to you, you can choose a healthier lifestyle and stop being controlled by food. She is the author of Happy Life at a Healthy Weight, creating a shame-free, healthy relationship with food and life. Welcome, Kay. Really happy to have you here today.
Thank you, Chrissy. I'm delighted to be here with you.
So happy. So, could we go? I usually like to start at the beginning of someone's story, and you mentioned it a bit in your bio. What is your story of personal resilience, and how did that impact your life to go into this field?
Yeah, it's really does go way back to when I was 8 years old and with a little red house with a white picket fence and mom, dad, and my brother and I I started. That's when I started emotional eating. I started a devotedly unhealthy relationship with food, and it was trauma related. So I was comforting myself with food and kind of hiding behind it. And it became kind of an obsession. So of overeating for years and yo-yo dieting for decades. And I looked in the mirror and I didn't even like who I saw. So that went on for so long that, I really had that habit. It's almost like that game of hide and seek. I was playing a game of hide and seek with my life. And it was so good when I finally got help, and I found a lady who helped me see that it wasn't just about what I was eating, it was about why I was eating, and that she pointed out to me that I had been using food to hide my shame, and I said, yes, that's so right. And she showed me a process that just to help me see what I was doing and that, it could be different. And I used this process that she showed me and it changed my life. And so that more than 16 years ago now, I have no longer overeating and yo-yo dieting. And I look in the mirror and I love who I see. It really led to my purpose. So, I was my first client, my first patient, having to heal myself of being controlled by food, and it became really my purpose to help people stop feeling controlled by food, stop emotional eating. And some of my clients have just said that it's so frustrating. It becomes an obsession, and this is something that they would experience a lot of freedom if they could break free of this. So I've incorporated that into a weight loss program that I've developed out of my own struggles with my weight and dieting, and found that dieting just really doesn't help. It makes things worse, actually. So I developed through these difficult times, I created some resilience through sheer, I think, determination that I'm going to get through this no matter what, and finally getting help.
I love that. I love that you talked about hiding your shame through food. So it's like feeding a need of some type, but it's not feeding nourishment to the body, right? It's feeding something different inside. But also what I find interesting about dieting is when we are in that cycle, because I have had issues with food as well all my life, and it definitely has gotten worse during tough times. It's so interesting that we can't stop thinking about food. And then when you get into like a traditional, maybe typical diet or weight loss program, you're putting more focus on food. So it really, it doesn't really make sense that way, does it? And what I love that you talked about the why. It's not so much, it's not the food that's the issue. There's something inside that just needs some attention. Is that
Right.
more accurate?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's trying to love yourself in a way. It's just misplaced, but trying to help yourself and do something for yourself that will relieve the pain and suffering that people are feeling who become obsessed by food and thinking about it all the time is it is a distraction from dealing with what's really going on also. But when you're young, you don't really know how you just cope the way you can cope, whatever is available to you.
Yes.
And what happened to be available a lot for me was my mother's homemade chocolate chip cookies right out of the oven. And, that's how I knew she loved me. And so I became really, I loved sweets and chocolate. And and along within the dieting, you're getting ready to stop eating those cookies and the chocolate because you're going to diet. And then when you're dieting, you're like, can hardly wait for the diet to end so you can get back to the chocolate and cookies. So it is a vicious cycle.
I remember being younger and being at a Weight Watchers meeting before like the holidays, and people were like trying to strategize how to have some baking without overindulging. And someone said, put it in the freezer. And I was like, I like frozen cookies better than thawed ones. That is not the answer. Which I learned from my
Yeah,
mom, because she would
I
have them in
hear
the
you.
freezer and would go in and sneak. It was awful. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's funny what goes through our minds, right?
Yeah, it's yeah, there we can find lots of ways workarounds for that.
Yes. So when you went to study in the field of nutrition and health, what 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 sort of resonated with you, and what made you take the approach that you've taken with relationships with food?
Yeah, I think it was definitely a help because when you start something like this early and you're young, you don't get a balanced view of what food is. It's just like, yeah, give me the chocolate. I don't care about the rest of it. But I think that, as I got older, as even with the dieting, I was realizing, oh, you have to eat more than you can't just live on sugar or ice cream or chocolate alone. That's not going to work. And of course, once I became a nutritionist and dietitian, I realized all these nutrients we need and how much our body really needs to be, at the top of our game. And, even I didn't realize at the time, but I actually realize it now that even things like acne, if you eat, at least for me, eating more those burgers and fries and stuff, saturated fat gave me acne. So there's a lot of consequences that you don't realize until you start looking at what food does for you, and it gives us the energy to do what we want to do. It's just so life-giving when finally I stopped to think about that.
Yeah, sort of cause and effect. And it's about how you felt more than, right? Like it's not about appearance to others, it's about who you saw in the mirror and how you feel. Because things like the skin, like that's one of the first places sort of illness or ill health will show up. It's a big organ. It's trying to get rid of things. So that's why acne often appears there. I, how is your approach different than, say, so if someone was like, I've gone to a traditional nutritionist or dietitian or taken, the Weight Watchers or the Jenny Craig or whatever, how is
Right.
your approach different?
Yeah, it's very different. And it's after, trying the wrong ways for decades, I finally like, okay, let's try something. Let's see what will actually work. And so part of that experiment is, and then becoming a dietitian and being in private practice for 13 years now, really crystallized for me that number one, dieting and weight loss programs are usually set up to not be sustainable. So we'll show you how to lose the weight and then good luck, you know, and that's why we're all yo-yo dieting. And secondly, that there's inner stuff going on. And I think I blocked that out all those years I was dieting. It was just like you follow a formula, you get your results, then you can go back to your cookies, not realizing that was just kind of, it's just like a pendulum. I was driving, me, and what I've seen from so many dieters, it's just I've lost weight 25 times and then I've regained weight 26 times. So we focus on sustainability from day one. And secondly, as I've just said, secondly, what's going on the inside, emotional eating. Some people are people pleasing. There's mindset issues, believing you can't do it. So many, and that's kind of a centerpiece of what I do, because I realized that as a dietitian, you'd like to be able to give people a list of high fiber foods, go to the grocery store, get them, eat them, everything's going to be better. But it's not that simple, because we have a lot of habits that are long-standing and that are connected with emotions. Not everybody, but some people are perfectionists. So we have our own variation on a theme of some inner stuff that gets in our way. And then with diets, they also hyper focus on food. And what we do is a comprehensive lifestyle change approach. It could be a lot of different things. Let's say a woman that worked with me, Loughrey, she was a businesswoman, and so she spent all her time serving other people, and she wasn't really, paying any attention to herself. And so her schedule didn't allow any time for her to focus on what she was eating and physical activity and all that. So we had to start with actually changing her work schedule so that she wasn't working and sending work emails at 1:30 in the morning. So there are lots of different things at play here. It's a complex project. And hyper focusing on the food, it just misses the mark.
And we talked about this just before we started recording too. Like there's a lot of stimulation and a lot of information that flies at us because our body knows what it needs and it gives us signals. It tells us when we're sleepy, when we're thirsty, when we want to laugh, when we're sad. It knows when we're in danger, when something hurts. There is also that natural intuition when it comes to food and what we might need and that, but there's so much messing up that it's hard for people to listen. And then if you add in trauma and mindset, there's another layer to that. But what are some
Yeah.
of the things out there that people should maybe be more gentle with themselves when they're like, why can't I control myself? What are some things that are sort of contributing to these issues with food shaming and fat shaming, and because that's not the place
Yeah.
to start with a healthy weight loss or a healthy
Right.
health program, right?
Yeah. And there's a lot, for women, food and shame go together. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote this book, and that it deals with food and shame and healing that connection. Because, even body image is like, how are you supposed to look? I mean, there's like, how are you supposed to look? How are you supposed to act? What are you supposed to wear? And so part of what my focus is let's throw away a lot of these rules and get back to, well, what is it that you really want as a person? Not your social self that's trying to fit in with everybody else, but what do you really want, in your life? What is the life you want to live? And what are you feeling that might be a driver to emotional eating? Like one of my clients, Katie, who was feeling lonely, and that drove her to binge eating at night. So we do have a lot of things that are masking what we really want. So being able to have compassion for ourselves and tune in to, what is it that I'm feeling right now? And what is it that I really want? Instead of thinking about all those shoulds and, you're not supposed to wear white after, after like Labor Day, or all of these things that they're kind of silly things that get embedded, that we even forget that are driving us.
Absolutely. Why was it so important for you to write this book? And tell us a bit about your book.
Yeah, it was really important because of this food shame connection, and being able to help women heal that and get in touch with what they truly want. And, it starts early. For the roots of food and shame usually start early, because the first time we have to fit in is to fit in to our family. And
Yes.
so we do start getting messages about what's okay in our family. And so as often, because kids are like just a ball of energy. So finally, we're being told, tone it down. we might even be told, sit down and shut up directly. Or it might just be things like stand up straight, put your elbows on the table. But we do start getting messages of don't be you. And so what I want to tell people is, yeah, do be you. you, you, there's a saying, be yourself, everyone else is taken, that quote by Oscar Wilde, I think it was. But we do get these messages that make it hard. And my client Katie, it wasn't okay to really, they didn't want conflict in the family. So it was just kind of like, don't bring things up. And she was curious, talkative. She wanted a conversation with people. So, she was like just told basically just keep things under wrap. So she was stuffing things down by partially by eating.
Yes.
So that's part of it. And then there is the emotional eating that starts to happen that I just mentioned. Katie's situation did lead to emotional eating. And even with her, her family she would work all day, she would come home, make dinner, and no conversation. People and the family left, and there she was feeling lonely. So that triggered that emotional eating. And then I have these 5 steps to stop being controlled by food that I have worked wonders for people like Katie who are emotional eaters.
Yeah. Would you be able to share them or some of them?
Sure, absolutely. So just really in a nutshell, the first thing is what are your triggers? And so there can be an underlying trigger that I talked about for Katie, in her early life and what happened in her household. But what would really then, when she was alone by herself, she would turn on the TV remote, and that triggered her, which would be the first step. And the second step was the cravings start. And so she would immediately start getting cravings for beer, chips, ice cream. And then the third step, which is really important, is how are you going to disrupt this? Because that's a stress reaction that's starting. The cravings are a message. I'm starting to get stressed. And then we go into automatic pilot. So how can you slow down and pause? And so, take a moment out to say, oh, okay, what's going on here? Ask yourself a question. Phil, one of my other clients who gained 50 pounds on eating M&Ms, he'd ask himself, is it worth it to eat these M&Ms and gain this weight? And then he will be able to answer his question and say, no, it's not. And then we can go into a why for him, which was why was it, what was he feeling and what did he really want? What he really wanted was, what he was feeling at that time is that, ooh, now I have high blood pressure and I might get a stroke. And what do I really want? I want to be around for my daughter. She's 2 years old now, but I want to be around for her when she grows up. So that's kind of the step 4. And the step 5 are, what are your options other than eating? What can you do for Katie? What can she do for her loneliness? Well, we talked about some options. Her favorite options was to call her sister, because that she knew she loved her sister. They had a good relationship. So that, there are some practical steps. But the trick is to address the emotion that's causing the eating, not just as she said, when she got angry or stressed, she would just stuff her face. So there is an alternative.
Yes. Yes, I love that. I have a great intuitive coach that sometimes reminds me, like before I go to maybe an event of people that I'm not always so comfortable with, or there's lots of emotion stuff. Like I have a loud, boisterous family, and I'm fun, but I'm a little more introverted. So it's literally like How'd you do? I'm like, I'm literally swallowing my words right now. Like literally, like,
Yeah, with
yeah,
discomfort. Yeah.
yes, yes. So now what I do now instead is I actually just lay on the floor, and that helps. I lay with my cats on the floor and I ground and I just listen to myself and I tell myself I'm okay. And that seems to help a lot. But it's just getting
Yeah.
quiet and still with myself. That's what I
Yeah.
do anyways. That
Yeah.
helps a lot.
Taking a few moments out to tune in to what would really make this feel safe, whatever that situation is. What's
Yeah.
out of kilter, what's, allowing breathing, always getting in touch with breathing and cat. So how comforting is that? Getting
Yes.
getting some companionship that they're in a different world. You don't have to think about the shoulds with your cat.
No, no. And it's funny because some of that shame, I know for myself, there's a bit of guilt, like, well, I was raised this way and I'm doing something different. And that kind of makes me feel bad because I love my parents. I love my grandparents or so and so that have sort of unintentionally programmed these things in that were programmed into them, like make sure you eat your whole plate and those
Right.
types of things. You have to eat at this time specifically, or if you
Yeah.
eat that, like it's so hyper focused on the food itself, which comes from a
Mhm.
different time, but I much prefer intuitive eating. Like if I'm hungry, I'm hungry. If I'm not, I'm not. And just trying to
Right.
honor what my body's saying to me at that time. It's a
Yeah.
process, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And knowing that people, generally speaking, that law of beneficial intent, benevolent intent, that people mean well, they're just misguided. And I don't know why still people are doing this, parents particularly, the clean the plate club, that you got to eat everything on your plate. It is, what it does is really, remove naturally. We talked about what's natural. Naturally, when little children are going to know when they're full.
Yes.
But when you override that with a message, you got to eat everything on your plate. What it does is really destroys or makes it hard to access that, oh, now I'm full. Let me just stop here. And in fact, we think it's a bad thing because, oh no, I must clean my plate. So I usually try to say to parents, if you do one thing, don't try to control what your kids eat. Let
Yes.
them naturally stop when they're done.
Yes. Yes. I love that. I love that. Where can people find your book and find you to work with you? Okay.
Yeah, well, everything I do is virtual. My book is Happy Life at a Healthy Weight. Is You can find it in bookstores, but you can also find it easily on Amazon, either paperback or ebook. And my website is www.sweetlifewellness.com because I want you all to live your sweet life. And I do have a free interactive quiz right on the home page that will help you discover what your inner roadblocks are to weight loss success and how to remove them. So I hope the viewers and listeners will
Mhm.
go there and get some good insights.
Yes, we'll definitely put that all in the show notes. Are there any last words of encouragement or wisdom or, observations or anything that you would love to share with the audience before we wrap up
Yeah.
today?
Well, thank you. I would just really suggest to take a stand for yourself.
Yeah.
And it really it's a kind of empowerment. It's okay to be you. So that means it's okay to speak up for yourself, show up for yourself, and that's really the beginning of success.
I love it. Thank you so much, Kay, for sharing your heart and your book. I hope a lot of people check it out because they're going to learn a lot from you and live much sweeter lives. I love it.
Thank you for having me, Chrissy.